Welcome, Chris Bale, to Trust Me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, you are the author of a book called Breaking the Social Media Prism: How to Make Our Platforms Less Polarizing. You're a Duke professor and director of the Polarization Lab, and we have so much to talk to you about. Okay, so you're a computational social scientist. What does that mean?
It's sort of interesting. A lot of times when we want to study people, historically, we've only had, maybe 1,000 data points. You could talk to 100 people, you could do a survey of 1,000 people. But now, thanks to things like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, we are sort of awash with data. And so in my field, there's been this huge movement to try to develop creative new ways to use those new types of data to study kind of all sorts of different human behavior, often using stuff like AI and other kinds of machine learning.
And you have been studying basically social media extremism. How would you kind of summarize it?
Yeah, I'd like to say I've seen it all. I mean, I've been studying this stuff for like 15 years. So, I go way back to this thing called MySpace, which, nobody under 30 knows about.
Oh,
But
yeah.
once upon a time there were platforms before Facebook. And, I've been studying political extremism, especially all sorts of extremism, anti-Muslim extremism, and more recently, sort of U.S. politics inspired extremism for about 15 years.
So, okay, we all tend to think that social media fosters extremism because of information silos and that we're just not getting exposed to the perspective of the other side. And if we got exposed to the perspective of the other side more, that we would all become more moderate. And it's an information problem, right? Your research has found that to not be true. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this was really surprising. I sort of thought this was the most promising explanation of what ails us. Like you said, we're all disconnected from each other. We're not listening to each other. Surely these evil corporations have created these structures, echo chambers, filter bubbles, whatever you want to call them, that prevent us from just simply understanding each other. And, that seemed doubly true 3 or 4 years ago when, we were witnessing, unprecedented events, sudden shifts in the political environment, like the election of Trump, or in Britain, the Brexit referendum, things we didn't really think were going to happen and all of a sudden happened. And it seemed really plausible that the reason a lot of us were surprised by these things is because we simply weren't exposed to like the palpable enthusiasm of Trump supporters, or, the strong support for leaving Europe and Britain. And so, for years, I thought, as someone who's interested in social media and wants to create some positive change, what we should really do is get people out of these echo chambers. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, we designed this really large study to try to take people out of their echo chambers, and discovered that probably wasn't a very good idea.
That is so crazy. I mean, that's shocking. So what exactly happened?
Yeah, it was shocking to us too. So, we paid about 1,200 people who use Twitter in the US to take a survey about their political views. We asked them about all sorts of stuff: climate change, racial discrimination, size of government. And then we offered half of them additional money to follow a bot on Twitter that they were told would tweet 24 messages a day. We didn't tell them what it was going to tweet, but we told them, you can make more money if you follow an account. Gradually, over the month-long study period, we began to increase the number of tweets that account made that were from the opposing political party. So if you were a Democrat, you started to see more tweets from Republicans. And these were elected officials, journalists, social media influencers, all sorts of different people who comprise the echo chamber. And then at the end of the month, we resurveyed everybody, thinking that our neat little experiment would have increased moderation, maybe just a little bit, among everybody who sort of was asked to step outside their echo chamber by following these bots. And instead, what we found was nobody became more moderate, or almost nobody became more moderate. And the vast majority of people actually became a little bit more polarized. So if you were, conservative before, you became more conservative after you followed our Democratic bot.
It's like an identity double down.
That is a fun
that's a nice way of
phrase.
putting it.
This really is in line with what we talk about a lot. Well, in some ways. In other ways, it completely contradicts what we talk about because we really believed in the echo chamber. But in other ways, when it comes to cults and extreme belief, what we consistently hear from experts, what we consistently have seen is that basically when you're presented with an attack on your belief system, and it is connected to your identity, people double down on that belief system instead of like listening to the facts. And that's why like attacking people with extreme belief with facts never works, because it just makes them be like, oh, you're trying to like fuck with my identity, and no one's fucking with my identity. Was there any accounting for like the way that they were receiving the tweets, knowing it was from this bot? Did that impact anything?
Yeah, so obviously we would be worried if people knew what we were trying to do, because in an experiment like this, if people are aware that they're being studied, they may either try to exhibit the kind of behavior that they think you want them to exhibit. So in this case, maybe people would be more moderate, right? Or maybe they'd be pissed off and be like, hey, you Duke professors, this was not cool. Why did you make me, follow a bot that tweets all this stuff I don't like? And so I'm going to pretend to be more extreme than I really am. Without getting like too much into the weeds, there's some tricks that we social scientists use to try to discourage that type of behavior. So one that we do, for example, is we disguise the purpose of the bot. So the first few days, they're just tweeting like beautiful landscapes, like super anodyne stuff. And then gradually we turn up the dial of sort of political content. And then it's not branded as like a bot that you see as like, hey, this is an evil bot trying to influence you. It's just a bot that's retweeting people. So you're just seeing like, our bot retweeted, Ted Cruz, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's not like, evil Russian bot is trying to change your mind. And then lastly, when we pick up the data points, and this is probably the most important point, when we survey people, we send them surveys designed to look like they come from a different group of researchers. And then we measure how much their minds change before and after the two surveys that seem to come from different sets of researchers. So unless people could remember sort of exactly how they responded to the first one and connect our invitation to follow the bot to the surveys that we were asking them to complete, we don't think it's likely that they were simply sort of responding in this sort of expressive way, saying, I don't like your study, or I'm trying to do what I think you want me to do.
Can you talk to us about the main reasons that people use social media?
Yeah, sure. And I think this really gets to the heart of the issue. When we hear people talk about the echo chamber, the idea is that there's some kind of like democratic ideal which underpins all of our interaction in these public spaces, right? That a place like Twitter in its ideal form should be a competition of ideas, right? That we should all just go out and like, I put my idea out about how to fix inflation. Okay, I could pick a less boring topic. Let's say climate change, and then you tell me yours, and then like we meet somewhere in the middle through some like reasoned deliberation where our facts kind of compete with each other for merit, right? That does not describe the typical motivation of most social media users I've studied over the years. Social media for me is all about status. It's about heightening the things we do that make us human. So if we want to take a big step back and think about what's weird about humans, for my money, it's that we care so much about what other people think about us. We sort of over centuries have developed these like ways of monitoring our social environments for clues about what other people think about us. As soon as I come on your podcast, like I'm looking to see if your heads are nodding, if you're falling asleep, if you're getting ready to throw tomatoes at me, right? and through that, like I can sort of like change how I behave. I'm sort of like constantly experimenting on my identity in order to see what works.
I was just going to say, I guess that's not surprising, seeing that we're social animals and like wolf packs and all of those things. But now we're advancing so fast to be able to share it on scales that we're not comprehending really. You're nodding, but is that making sense at all?
Yeah, no,
okay.
Like, if we think about what social media does differently, right? It does two really important things, I think. The first is that, we have a much broader range of identities that we can present to people, so like, if you never meet someone in person, you could pretend to be a professional basketball player or like, a great break dancer. Like I am neither, right? But
I'm both.
If we were on, if we were on Twitter and I was an anonymous account, right, I can be whoever I want to be. So I can kind of experiment with a broader range of identities. And then second, I have sort of built into most platforms technology to monitor what other people are thinking of me with unprecedented speed. So, for
Right.
example, like as soon as I post something, right, I get that, that immediate response, or more often non-response. If your experience is like most people, not everybody has a podcast as famous as yours. A lot of podcasts get ignored. A lot of same thing. A lot of social media posts get ignored. But we have this way of sort of getting real-time feedback about what huge numbers of people think of us. And of course, that information is very often wrong, and that's part of the big problem here. But it's something that, to the extent that our brains cue in on any hints about how to fit in, this is one of the key things that social media has changed about how we act and behave, I think.
So basically, the internet gives us more room to create an identity that we didn't have. We are all looking to belong always. That's just like programmed into us. It's part of how we exist in the world as human beings. But now it's not just like your chess club that you join or your local sports team or whatever. We have all of these options, and we can kind of test in real time, like, is this my identity? Do I belong here? Are these my people? Or is it over here? Is this going to be the thing that gets me engagement? Does that broader range of options and like real time feedback make people more likely to become extreme in their identities?
I think so. Our research definitely suggests this is going on. So I'll tell you a story. One of the weird things about our research is that we do this data science style analysis of hundreds of millions of tweets. We also actually talk to people, like the thought of it, right? And when we begin to talk to people and sort of compare how they present themselves online and off, this sort of stuff just lit up as one of the key parts of the story here. So, for example, one of the people we studied, this guy that I call Ray in my book, to protect his confidentiality, it's like the nicest person you'll ever meet, just like super civil, polite, funny, easy to talk to. Goes out of his way to say like how he never gets in arguments, stays away from politics, this, that, and the other, right? And then when we go to look up his persona online, which we could do through linking like our sophisticated kind of data science techniques, we discover that Ray is the biggest troll on the internet. Like, I'm saying that as someone who studied these folks for like 15 years. And like each night he was undergoing this Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde style transformation where, despite seeming like a mildly right-leaning guy, he turns into like the biggest MAGA warrior, one of the biggest MAGA warriors I've ever seen,
Wow.
tweeting, every night, multiple Photoshopped memes about Nancy Pelosi, Obama, or whoever. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the trolls among us, we think, are sort of hiding in plain sight because of this unprecedented flexibility. We can find ways to fit in different places that we never would have found before.